So welcome to Conversation with Tenzin. Today on this episode, I have my very good friend Siddhartha, who we also call Tutu. And Siddhartha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Tenzin.
So we'll begin by trying to get to know you. So please tell us your story, how you got here and everything that you do.
I was a very curious child, and I think I also believed in having order in everything. So creating order. So since I was a child, I actually liked games where where I was creating symmetry or arranging things. Geometry, puzzles. So it was, I guess, very instinctual that I got into. Later on, I got into planning. But yeah, as a child, I was curious, troublemaker in school, had average grades. Actually, I guess I was not a teacher's nightmare, but entertained the teachers a lot.
Okay.
They knew, they would say you're smart, but you're not focusing, and you're not.
So you're always the entertainer.
Always the
You're
entertainer.
still an entertainer
Yes.
in a group.
And I guess that's instinctual. I think that comes through since you're a child. You do that, and nothing. Then I also loved sports. So sports is one of my passions. So as you grow older, so when I turned around 28, 29, you ask yourself what are the few things you want to actually do in your life. You want to do maybe everything. Or many things, but what are the things that you want to focus on? Or what are the things that you could call your legacy? So sports was one of those things that I always want to be involved in some sort of sport. Or it could be playing the sport, it could be managing an event, it could be something, but it has to do with sports. And the other thing was planning, of course. So most people like calling it urban planning, but I prefer calling it settlement planning because it encompasses
both urban and rural.
And I feel it's extremely important, but because both are very, intricately linked. And are like urban areas. I mean, we in college defined urban in a very unique way. So urban stems from urbane, and so urbanity or urbanism. There's also Pope Urbane. The popes are also called urbane. So urbane is can be used as an adjective also.
So it's like a more sophisticated person?
Exactly. Okay. And so a settlement populated with sophisticated people is urban. And so as an urban planner, you try to, that could be a goal. I'm not saying that is necessarily the goal. You try to create settlements that are more urbane. And so I don't like that definition. In the sense, I like this definition of urbane, but I don't think that only urban planning is the thing, because then you are approaching the problem you're limiting your approach, and you're saying, okay, so now we are only going to create sophisticated towns, and then we don't know what sophisticated means. So then you are lost in the definitions. And I think even so I also teach. I teach a master's course in urban and regional development planning and administration. So in that I teach my students that there is this definition urbane, but and maybe you can aim for that. If your problem is that then you can also go into something known as gentrification, where you start essentially sidelining the poor in your search for being urbane and posh.
The search to create something new.
Correct. And something that's sparkling, and flashy. And people then, I've seen this in India, then people don't like seeing poor people. Then poor people are hidden.
There's a discrimination.
There's discrimination. There's no focus on the poor. So I'm very careful in how one should define what they do and what they're approaching. But I'm not judging people who say they're urban planners. Of course, even I'm an urban planner. As one of the definitions of what I do is urban planning, because I work in urban areas. Because the other definition of urban, say, is a place which is populated by an X population minimum, with such a density, and where, and like a high amount of the population is involved in secondary or tertiary sector activities, as opposed to primary being agriculture, mining, fishing, raw material gathering, essentially. So you can call that also urban. But then that also, I think, goes against the dignity of farmers, fishermen,
Miners.
and then what starts happening is, so you say that they are poor, or like you don't want to deal with this, and so you say, oh, the problem will be solved. Everybody will move to cities. And so I have a big issue. Everybody knows in my group. All of you who know, you know. So there's a big problem with. According to me, there's a big problem. But that doesn't mean that I'm not hopeful. That doesn't mean
You're pessimistic?
that I'm pessimistic at all. No, I'm not pessimistic. I'm extremely enthusiastic. I'm extremely hopeful. And I feel with today's technology, in transportation, communication, COVID unfortunately came and went, but COVID taught us one thing, that work from home is possible. So I realized that people can actually stay in their villages and work from home if they are skilled enough, and if they have this infrastructure. So maybe you can define some sort of infrastructure as urban, and you can bring it into villages.
Yes.
And say that, hey, we are, closing that divide between rich and poor, where it comes to
And urban and rural.
where it comes to this access to technology, access to opportunity.
Yes, and we can solve a lot of issues like rural-urban migration.
Exactly.
And now country-to-country migration. All this issues.
Which is a big trend now.
Yeah, it's a big trend.
And that's another question. Like, we were talking about Bhutan.
Yes.
And you were saying a lot of people are migrating. And I said, why?
But it's because of the amenities, and if given the choice, nobody wants to migrate. Like when we discussed earlier, nobody wants to migrate, but they are doing it so because they don't have these amenities. One would prefer to work at home, earn the same amount like any other global work.
Yeah.
And then if they have the amenities in their houses, they would stay back.
Yeah, they'd stay back. They'd want to be around their family, their
cats, their dogs.
Yeah. You know why? Like, in fact, I really like this. Like my mom and her brother and sister, they actually play cards with their cousins. They're all in the age of retirement. Doesn't mean they're retired. And but every evening they meet and they play cards. And I feel it's a very nice thing. And for me, who comes from office in the evening and I see them playing cards, it's very soothing. I ask them, what's the score? What's going on? Everybody's happy. And what you realize is that you have only one life. And so how you spend it. And as planners, it is our responsibility to enable people to have a good life. From our side. Of course, it's up to people to also have a good life. I mean, if you're a pessimism, no, but like if you're a really negative person and you just can't enjoy yourself, that's a different story. So I think that's a very important responsibility as a professional planner, which is to ensure that you are providing equitable, just, and sustainable good life opportunities. Let's call it that.
Enabling environment.
Yeah, where there's an enabling environment. Enabling for what? Where you can learn, you have the opportunity to learn,
you can
thrive, get opportunity, like get gainful employment, and be happy, be safe. So, you look at security, access, and status. So even your social status is so dependent on what you earn and, where you stay and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think, like all of us come from these well-to-do families, I would say, as compared to, say, people who are very poor. And I feel it's our responsibility to one level to bring some sort of, like a semblance of equity to the world. because we already are, we are well off.
Privileged.
Yeah, we are privileged. So then it's our job, I guess. It's not like a job. I'm not saying everybody should do it, but if you feel it, you should do it. But I think it's important.
So before you ever thought of planning and city planning, was there a time before you got into this that you wanted to be something else?
Football player.
How old?
I wanted to play for Real Madrid, Newcastle United,
Newcastle United. I know.
Barcelona. Yeah. I had these grand dreams of...
So when did that dream got cancelled?
So
at what age
at
were
20...
you introduced?
At 23.
At 23?
Yeah. So I used to play for a club. I won't say I was like the best player or even close to it, but I am a decent player.
Okay.
And I loved, my coaches were really amazing. I really loved that the fact that in sport is beautiful because it brings discipline, competition in a disciplined way, then and in a more just way. So competition can be considered as unfair and unjust, but in this case, it's just because you have worked hard, practiced hard, and then you are winning. So there's this I think sports is very eloquent and representative of wider life, because it can be unfair.
Okay.
People can be against you. Maybe the referee is against you, and you might get a few, bad calls against you. And I think it's a good learning in life that if you're unlucky, it's your job to stay calm and push on, and not give up, and not get frustrated, and not get angry. So I feel that this is so for me, football actually saved me. As a young guy, it gave me that sense of belonging to my team, dedication. My teammates, I still, we still play.
Okay.
Like 20 years later, 20, 30 years later. Everybody's got some niggling injury. Everybody's like slower, but we still play. Okay. And it was, I think, football was this amazing outlet. Football means soccer for Americans.
Yeah.
It's this American,
Amazing outlet.
It's this amazing outlet where you learn a lot of things. And so any sport, I'm not just saying football is because I like football, but I love tennis also. So the idea is that if you surround yourself with things that are healthy and, things that you like. So I'm very lucky in that way that I found these things.
You found an activity.
Yeah. And I wanted to be, because I wanted to be a proper professional player. And when that ended, I was 23 and I thought I was going to be called for you're quite old. At 23, you're quite old.
Called for the national team?
Not national team. I was going to be scouted, I thought. And that call didn't come.
By Newcastle United?
Yeah. Inshallah, Newcastle United. So no, but that call didn't... I mean, you realize, you're hopeful till that age.
Oh, okay.
And then you just say that, okay, I'm not going to be a high-class professional player.
I'm good, but not that good enough.
And that's another thing about sport and football. You learn humility, you learn about yourself, and you learn to deal with disappointment where you realize that maybe this is not for me. So that was a good learning actually. But it also means, it didn't mean that football stopped. It meant I could enjoy it more without feeling tense that, I have to achieve something. And my other thing was, like I said before, so I used to play a lot of computer games like SimCity and stuff, where I was, creating cities. So that was a natural progression into planning for me, because, and then I realized how serious planning is, and it's not a game.
It's not a game.
But I think for kids, it's a nice way to pass the time, because I think there are some concepts of planning that every citizen should know. For instance, land use. So every citizen should know what their land use is. You know, what property they own, what is the status of their property, stuff like that is important. So I feel that in that sense, say SimCity should pay me for this as a promoter of SimCity, but SimCity was good, yeah. Yeah.
And another thing that I wanted to ask is, I cannot let you go without asking this. Your software.
My software.
Yes, for Quantified City Movement, which you have coined.
The Quantified Cities Movement.
So I want you to talk about this, how it came about. What was that moment that you said that made you think that, okay, I'm going to do this, and you just did it?
So, great question. And yeah. So, okay, this is what happens. So, I was young and I was idealistic and I thought I was going to change the world.
Okay, that's a good start.
Yeah. And so I would join all these groups that would protest against stuff, mainly for environmental reasons. So we have these hills around Pune which needed saving. They still do. And
what is the name of the hill?
so there's a whole like Pune is like in a bowl, and there's hills on all sides, almost all sides. So they are known as there's these hills a bit outside Pune, and then there's these hills that we actually climb called Vetar Tekadi and Hanuman Tekadi and stuff like that. So when you come to Pune, we will go up the hills.
Okay.
So it's beautiful. I mean, you get a whole view of the city. Climbing is, I think, a great way to pass your time. It's quite meditative. There's a workout involved, so I think it's nice. So we actually did manage to protect the hills. When I was part of this whole movement, it's still around. It's called the Green Pune movement. I was quite young. I was 18, 19. My mum was one of the few important drivers of this movement. So that was also another reason I was part of it. But I felt very strongly about protecting the hills, protecting nature, stuff like that. So we took part in this, and we struggled, and we did a lot of what we call morchas, right? And
Activism
and protesting in the streets and stuff. And what I realized is that all this protesting does not count until you present a case.
Yes, with evidence.
With evidence. And citizens citizens will not follow that evidence unless they own it. So there has to be, and so my thesis was actually in citizens' participation.
The ownership of the evidence.
So ownership of evidence, ownership of choice, based on knowing the evidence. And so empowerment, essentially. So in a truly democratic system, ideally, you would have citizens with a perfect knowledge of evidence. That doesn't happen, obviously. But you would ideally want that they are perfectly knowledgeable about all the evidence that exists, and they have this ability also to analyze it in a very scientific manner.
It's like having a screen, and you know where your food is coming from, what is being wasted,
Exactly.
and where the water is, how much do we have.
Perfect.
So it's like a visual display.
Exactly. So what I did was, I said that, okay, we can't achieve all this perfection, but at least we can start.
You can try.
And we called it the Quantified Cities Movement because we felt it has to be a movement. Quantified Cities Movement, like what we realize is that, so for this evidence, it has to be quantifiable. And so we have to be able to count. We have to be able to showcase this to everyone, which is everybody has to be on the same page. So with QCM, we actually were struggling with the name, and so we were, I mean, it was very basic. We were like, what do we want to do? We want to count.
Yes.
What are we counting? Cities, things in cities. What should it be? Movement. There has to be a sense of movement, moving. Okay, and so then we came up with Quantified Cities Movement. And to support the Quantified Cities Movement, we actually came. So in the Quantified Cities Movement, we realized that we need a mobile application. Before it was not a mobile application. Before we did this very cumbersome thing. We put QR codes at every 200 meters.
My God.
Yes. And I have stuck about 300 QR codes. And this is in Pune. And this is just before the rains. So we had a rain, half the QR codes were gone. So then we realized, okay,
This is not working.
we need an app, and it's going to cost a bit, but we got an app. We got an app. We developed it. Then we showed it to the UNICEF. Then the UNICEF liked it. So then we proposed a project to enable students to be part of, uploading evidence using this app, and to create policy which is participatory policy essentially. And once you identify problems, so you compare them against some sort of standard. So we involve the students in coming up with their own standards as they perceive them for their safety and stuff like that. Then those students said that, okay, this is our standard. And then they checked against that standard in the streets. And then they said, this is a gap. This is a mismatch. This is dangerous. And then based on that, we made a policy paper and submitted it to elected representatives. And it was well received.
Okay.
And the UNICEF loved it. This is UNICEF India Disaster Risk Reduction section.
UNICEF DRR.
Yeah. And so they supported us quite a bit in, in making sure that the app got to places. So that was nice. And, it also gives you a lot of confidence if the UNICEF supports you.
Yes. Exactly.
So that was a nice feeling. And then it was like the person who was kind of, I'll call him my mentor. Through these projects, he actually mentored me. He's from the UNICEF, Sarabjit Singh Sahota, and like a very special person. And he was very cruel. Okay, like he used to be like, you don't know anything, like all the time, like, oh, it's so sad to see you, like, and it used to feel really bad, like, it used to hurt. And so then he told me that, I don't know, like, how will you institutionalize this, right?
Yeah,
this whole,
the question.
And so then that funny story about, so what we came up with was the Alliance for Resilient Cities, ARC.
Yeah,
and so
also
that's the funny story.
Yeah,
that's where it becomes an arc. And so the name came from ARC. So we said, how do we arc? And then alliance. Oh, AR, Alliance for Resilient Cities, ARC. Okay. So it became catchy.
Yeah, but ARC is a very strong structure.
It's a strong structure, exactly. And so it's a college alliance. But it's also an alliance of like government bodies, and that's doing well. And so the whole idea is like, looking back at what I said, that you want to improve cities, you want to improve justice. So you need all the players on board and on a transparent platform. So Quantified Cities Movement enables that transparency because it's citizens uploading, sending real-time local area, location-based data. Where the government, the UN or UN agencies can see it.
Relevant stakeholders can see
all citizens can see it. The media can see it. And so what I feel is that is very powerful because then you have a common platform that everybody can share on, which creates that transparency, which creates accountability. And it creates accountability within citizens as well. So many people like blaming the government.
Yes, that's the easiest thing to do.
It's the easiest thing to do. And in some cases, actually, they should not be blamed because they are actually working hard. Normally, they are, and that's where my concept of carrying capacity comes. They normally...
You are the master of carrying capacity.
I am the evangelist of carrying capacity.
Yes.
So, with the government, I feel they should be supported because they usually don't have the capacity.
Yes, that's what we always state, lack of human resources, lack of fund.
Exactly.
But when we have human resources and fund, we don't know where to do what. And one person will make the planning and say, okay, we'll fill this pothole, that pothole. So
exactly. Yeah. So what do you prioritize?
Stressed.
Yes, no, and what do you prioritize? So where do you allocate the money?
That person will prioritize.
Exactly. No, and it's a stressed out person.
Yeah.
And who knows that there is...
overworked.
She will be overworked. And not only that, there will be a very limited amount of people who can do things. So I feel it's also the responsibility of citizens to partake in taking care of their city with the government.
So that gives them ownership.
That gives them real ownership because then they are proud of what they did. and they're proud of their streets. They're proud of taking care of something. So the act of taking care, I feel, is a very important act. And if young, if kids can be part of that act of taking care, it becomes very special, because then this culture of taking care of your city, of your neighborhood, it gets imbibed, because as you grow up, you've been doing it, so it becomes a culture. So it's something like, I'm guessing, I've never been to Switzerland, but we hear a lot. So maybe something like Switzerland, where they are quite involved, like there is direct democracy in Switzerland. So actually citizens are directly asked to vote on policy. It's not the
Legislatures.
The legislature does propose the policy, but then citizens are also given the opportunity, which gives them more a sense of control. But for that to happen, they have to be involved in taking care of their neighborhood, of their city.
They have to be aware of their surroundings.
Exactly, aware and involved.
Yes.
And so what we did was, we said that, okay, there is no capacity for, say, a city, town, village. So then that last concept of equitable distribution, prioritization of resources, all the problems that planners face, because you have unlimited wants, the problem of economics, unlimited wants and limited resources. So what we do is, this is not being done, but it's generally done. It's common sense. So people do this in certain ways about certain things. But what I'm trying to push is that you do this as a one-time index, baseline, where you say that if there is an X population, this is the number of calories that need to be produced for that population to not go hungry. This is the amount of water, the liters of water that need to be replenished, so that the population is not going, thirsty. And in the same way, so maybe you can not add government officers to improve the capacity, but maybe you can add some technology that aids the government officers to improve that capacity. And I feel that Quantified Cities Movement is one of those tech.
This is a high-tech
inputs,
Yeah.
which helps like a government also. What I'm trying to say is that this will help the government. Many citizens think it's a way of complaining against the government. And I say, no, you are helping the government. You're helping them do their job. And you should be compassionate in that way. Because they have they don't have the capacity.
Yeah.
Right? And so in the same way, we what I feel very strongly about is, it's a tool, it's just a tool. So, and it should be used properly. So tools can be used improperly.
Yeah.
So I think that's also an important thing, that you use technology.
Risk associated.
You can create risk, you can do a lot of harm.
Yes.
So you have to be careful in how that tool is distributed, how people are trained to use it, and then how it is used. And I feel that Quantified Cities Movement it's nice. I created it. But I would say that one should always be, I'm saying that, it's a tool. It's a tool and it's going to be given in somebody's hands. So they have to be properly trained. So another important thing we do is we actually enable people. Like we work with citizens pro bono, and we actually enable them in using this tool, how to analyze problems, and so on and so forth.
So yeah, going forward, what do you think would be your, next step going forward from here? Are you still going to work on this software or do something else? But I know you'll be in planning and all, but what are your plans going forward?
So one is, I think it's Claudia, who was the mayor of Bogota. She was pushing...
Yes.
Right?
I remember. We attended the session together.
Yeah. And she was pushing this idea of this concept of the city of care. And so I've really latched onto it. I really liked it. So that is one thing that I will try to develop some tools for. And considering that I have this app system, you can easily do that. You can connect that.
Okay.
So that's one thing. Yeah, so I will going forward. I will further improve this tool. I will try to spread it across towns and cities. And
So you're more convinced now.
I'm more convinced. Being here in America, and this thing does not exist here either,
Okay.
was also quite a pleasant surprise.
Okay.
But it was also, it showed that it's needed. It's the need of the hour. So that has also been encouraging. That I have, we've created something. My team and I have created something that is unique and that could be needed, truly helpful. So we have to push. And the other thing, which is this carrying capacity idea, I feel that it's not been published enough. I mean, carrying capacity is an ecological concept. It's not a planning concept. And I think it needs to be brought into planning, integrated with something known as ecosystem services. So integrated with a few other concepts. It's also Malthusian in a way. Malthus was also warning people of, as populations grow, resources fall, then populations die out, then resources go up, and then again populations grow.
This is the case of Easter Island.
Exactly. Yes, which you pointed out.
Yes.
So the thing is that this is a true, even Elon Musk is saying that we will have to go to Mars. Right.
So he's foreseeing the future.
Exactly. But we should not need to go to Mars.
Yes.
So how do we do that? Like, how do we improve? So technology is one way of improving. So where do we need the technology? What technology? So what are the problems to be solved? And how do we articulate them especially? And so I feel to identify these problems and articulate these problems, we need to measure like every settlement on carrying capacity. And this links into sustainable development goals very strongly. Which the UN are pushing, and I like their goals. I like that list of goals, and I think this dovetails perfectly into that because you want to get zero hunger. So that means you want to look at productivity. Many people forget that cities do not produce food, or they produce very limited food. So it's the villages that we depend on. So how do we enable a humane way in improving productivity?
So this is what Bish, Professor Bish also said when he was in Africa. He went to this urban city and he found that people are growing their own food. And the first judgment he made was, these are from rural poor area who migrated to the city and they are growing their own food. They're bringing their old habits. But he was surprised to find that they were educated people.
So I'm also a big supporter of urban farming, and I would say urban farming should be picked up. It should be promoted, and I think it will be really interesting. Like you could make like small markets, local, hyper-local markets where people produce things and like either exchange with each other or actually pay for something. Like, but you could even you could even have a barter system. I mean,
I have extra lettuce, you have extra tomatoes.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is important for the poor. Especially in India where we have so many poor, it is important for them as well because like the thing, there's another phenomenon. People are forgetting the skill of growing food. As a society, you don't want to, it won't happen. I don't think it will happen. There's enough farmers. But
why would we want to grow food? Now we have Uber Eats.
That's the problem. And people don't know where that Uber Eats is coming from. The raw materials. Right?
What do you have in India? Zivago?
No, we have Zomato. Then we have Swiggy.
Okay.
Much better than Uber Eats.
Okay.
No, but the thing is, so this is one more thing. Like I'm promoting. So I'm even playing around with an idea of like buildings being able to sustain themselves. So having rainwater harvesting on the roof. So you have enough water stored for X amount of time, which you can use for drinking and stuff like that. Solar panels that are giving like decentralized energy to that building, stuff like that. So I mean, so for the future, that's something I'm also looking into. So unit-based, a lot of unit-based.
Energy.
Yeah, so unit-based energy, unit-based water harvesting, unit-based food creation, so which is also energy.
Actually, I think the whole thing will come under energy. The calories consumed,
Precisely.
the units, everything can be in the energy.
Exactly, perfect.
Scheme.
And that's what we are trying to push. And if it's not unit based, it's not like one building, then maybe it will be cluster based. So you can even have your solid waste management, solid waste, so like recycling.
This is a headache right now.
Yeah, and it's a big headache.
Yes.
So I'm very excited about the future.
Yes.
And I think one
These challenges are opportunities now.
yeah, and that's the irony, because it's the worst thing. Like it's there is this thing known as a Hippocratic oath that doctors take, and I think we planners should also take it.
Okay, what is that Hippocratic?
So it's basically an oath because you should not misuse your power. And see, the doctor's vocation, in the same way a planner's vocation, only means something when there's a problem. Because we are here to solve problems. But our whole idea is to solve the problem, so there are no problems.
Yeah, the cycle, right?
Yeah. So my goal is to stop working.
So that is your ultimate.
Imagine
goal.
if you could just solve all the problems and then you just didn't have to work as a planner.
And you didn't have any more new jobs.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. So we will keep working as planners. But yeah, that is an interesting dichotomy. Yeah.
So yeah, we have had this amazing 10 months of SPURS program together.
Yeah.
How has this changed you as a person? Like the Siddhartha who came here in August last year and the Siddhartha you're right now. How has that changed?
I think it's amazing. So the Siddhartha that came was, though I had a lot of experience, though I had done a lot of stuff, even though I have, come in a way, like the Siddhartha version, say 1, the Siddhartha version 2, which is going back, is more confident. I'm more enthusiastic. I'm looking forward, and I carry a lot of strengths because I now have so many friends like you, so many colleagues. So I'm like carrying, like what I'm taking back is friends like you.
Thank you.
And I feel more confident. I feel surer, even as a human being, because I'm going back with this enthusiasm and with this surety that, so like it taught me that what I'm doing is correct. Like whatever path I'm on,
I'm in the right direction.
I'm in the right direction. So that's one big thing that, so there is no self-doubt. There is always some self-doubt, but self-doubt is good.
But it is reduced.
Yeah, and a reduced amount of self-doubt is good. It keeps you on your toes. But in this case, it has given me a lot more confidence. So like the way I will approach problems will be in a more confident manner. It will be, I've got a great network. So I'm very excited to work with the entire network and, come up with projects, come up with research projects, maybe publish together. So there's a lot of new things which I could not maybe do before, that I can see I can do now. So I would say highly enthusiastic, highly confident, and feeling very
Motivated
and feeling more like a world citizen.
Okay.
More like I'm part of the world and not just my microcosm.
Yes.
So yeah.
I think it's because all the problems that we have discussed, although we are from different parts of the world, it's quite common. That's why you feel more worldly.
Exactly. And you realize that wherever you're from, the problems are the same.
Yes.
And we are all trying to do the same thing, which is solve these problems. So it's very nice. And we are at MIT, so
yeah.
we have been given this honor to be at MIT. So I think that's also a very special thing now.
It's a privilege.
It's a privilege, and we move out of here as people who are fellows from MIT. So we carry that with us now, which is special.
The bigger responsibility.
And it's a responsibility, yeah.
So my last question to you, Siddhartha, is, this is something that I ask everybody to end the podcast. What motivates you? Why do you do the things that you do every day? So what is your motivation?
So I think that there is 2 or 3 things. One is just my curiosity. Like I have a very childish curiosity. And normally it's to solve problems, but it's about everything. Like, so one of the motivators is this very childish, very I won't call it childish, but you know what? It's youthful. It's very like I'm exuberant.
It's innocent.
Yeah, it's innocent, and I'm always like questioning. Like I'm always curious. I'm not question. I'm not. I can be cynical, but it's more curious. I'm just like, what is this? What is this? What does that
You
mean?
have the hunger to learn.
I have this big, major hunger to learn. And another thing is that my late grandmother actually, she lived till 103, and so that came later. That came, when she turned 100.
Okay.
Somebody was taking an interview and they asked her, "What's the secret?"
For your long life?
Yeah. And she said, "You know what? Death is not in my hands, but how I live is."
Oh.
And I think that's a very special attitude.
Yes.
And I've now carried that on board. So another motivation is that you live to the fullest. And
You just have one life.
you have this one life, so don't be worried.
Don't be sober.
Somber. Don't be somber. Yeah. Don't be worried, don't be somber. Be careful, but be enthusiastic. And carry it through. Like, whatever you started, try to finish it. So
Yes. And give it your best.
and give it your best shot. And it's okay if you fail. But give it your best.
Part, yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this with me and taking time.
Thank you for having me.
I know we have had so many conversations over coffee, and this has been one of the highlights of my stay.
Mine
here.
too.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have learned a lot from each other. I think more from you
No,
than from me.
no, I think it goes both ways. I think we will learn more. I'm looking to the
Yeah.
future. So I'm coming to Bhutan in July.
Okay, I'll see you in Bhutan. So thank you for listening to Conversations with Tenzin. This is the reason why I'm doing this podcast. I meet a lot of amazing, wonderful, fascinating people like my friend Siddhartha. So I want to not forget the people and their stories, especially their stories. So this is the reason why I'm doing this podcast. So thank you so much for listening to Conversations with Tenzin.